Lin-Manuel Miranda, you are the man of the moment, the man of the hour, the man of the year.
Thank you. I remember being Conrad Birdie, and all the girls in the grade had to faint when I sang. And I said, I'm doing this for the rest of my life.
Maybe you've heard of him, NFL superstar, Hall of Famer Joe Montana.
The game is just so much fun. I always say I wish people could go out on the field one Sunday afternoon and play the game. And win or lose, just to get that feeling of what it's like out there. Because there's nothing like it, and nothing like it around.
Carmen's Lassant, currently starring as George Washington in Hamilton on Broadway. There's so much of your work dating back to 2006 and, on YouTube.
So, yeah.
No, look, it isn't embarrassing, and here's why. I say this all the time, and it's like my life's mission to remind people that being new at something is not the same as being bad at something. And if you don't start new at something, you'll never get good at it.
You taking me to church, Laura? Oh, come on.
Todrick called.
Todrick, I love you.
Thank you. You're so sweet. I think we're going to be best friends.
I agree.
I'm following you back on Instagram and Twitter right now, and it's going to be a BFF situation. You have no choice.
Welcome, Tori Amos.
Hi, Laura. What's going on in the world? We have to respond to that and work together every night. Collaboratively. I think that's essential because it's important that we're sharing, yes, our stories, but we're also planting seeds.
Liza Koshy. Hello. You are both on screen and off, really setting an incredible example for the young people of today. And it's really been an honor to spend this time with you today, Liza.
I'm in love with you.
Let's get married.
Let's go.
Welcome to Laura Heywood Interviews. I'm Laura Heywood, and today is a different kind of show. Rather than having somebody sit in studio with me, we're going to revisit some of my favorite conversations with actors who are currently Tony nominees. The Tonys is so soon, so I thought today would be the perfect time to go back in history, not by much, but just hear a couple of conversations I had with these folks who have now found this moment in the spotlight. As you may know, I do interviews for a ton of different outlets, including CBS, and I worked for SiriusXM, and I've done over 150 interviews at Build Series NYC, which is a project of Verizon Media. And over the course of my career, I've sat down with several hundred celebrities. Some of them are in sports, and some of them have written books, and some of them are celebrity chefs. The vast majority of them are Broadway stars. If you check the hashtag Laura Heywood Interviews on Instagram, you can find references and photos and clips of a whole bunch of them. Plus, a full library of interviews is available at lauraheywoodmedia.com. One of my favorites ever was Ali Stroker. You may know her as Ado Annie in the current revival of Rodgers and Hammerstein's Oklahoma. I interviewed her back in 2017. She'd recently finished a run in Deaf West Spring Awakening, in which she made her Broadway debut. If you saw that one, you may have noticed that there was an actor on stage in a wheelchair, and that was Ali Stroker. She, as far as any documents show, she's the first actor on Broadway in a wheelchair, and now she is making history as the first Tony nominee in a wheelchair, and that is far from being her only defining characteristic, but she is certainly breaking boundaries. I want to play this conversation that we had back then because even though she did not know about her role as Ado Annie in Rodgers and Hammerstein's, I wanted to say Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella, Rodgers and Hammerstein's Oklahoma, back when we talked, I learned so much about her journey and her process and how she says that being in a wheelchair was the perfect preparation for show business. And I just fell in total love with Ali. And I'm excited to share our conversation with you. Let's go back in time to 2017 and hear from now Tony-nominated Ali Stroker. I'm Laura Heywood. Welcome, Ali Stroker.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you here. I saw you in Spring Awakening on Broadway 4 times.
I can't believe that. That's amazing.
there's a reason they call me Broadway Girl. Spring Awakening is probably my favorite musical of the last 15 years. I saw the original almost 20 times. So, and I will say actually that I thought it seemed pretty soon for a revival.
Yeah, definitely.
But you were part of this groundbreaking new way of making musical theater. Let's dive right in. Can you talk about the Deaf West production of Spring Awakening?
Yes. So the revival was with a company called Deaf West, and half of the actors in the cast were deaf and half were hearing. And the deaf actors played the lead roles, and they signed and acted while their counterpart, their pair, basically, voiced all of the lines and the songs for them. So for the audience, it was such an inclusive experience because you could be a deaf audience member or a hearing audience member and get the entire show, which is so unique for the deaf community.
I've been to shows where there have been interpreters off to the side, but this time the signing was really, the language was part of the choreography.
Yeah.
And it was like nothing I've ever seen before.
Yeah.
It was not designed originally to come to Broadway, right? It was a tiny production in Los Angeles.
That's right. So a year before we opened on Broadway, we did a small black box production in downtown LA. And I always say, you never think you're going to go to Los Angeles to get your first Broadway show, ever. And then here we were doing this small production that then producers came to see, and we did a bigger production at the Wallace Annenberg in Beverly Hills. And then like a few weeks later, we got an email from our producers being like, we're opening on Broadway in 3 months. And I like sobbed.
Were you out of the country when you got that email?
Yes, I was in South Africa with no internet. And one morning I was like, God, I have to check my email to find an email being like, hey, you're going to Broadway. I was like, this is not real.
I always like to talk to performers about their origin stories, sort of how they got the bug. And you decided pretty early on that you were going to be on Broadway despite the differently abledness. Do you like differently abled, disabled, wheelchair bound?
Great question.
What adjectives should we be using?
So when I talk about disability, I use the language disability because it's just commonly known, but I like to identify as being differently abled because dissing my abilities feels so wrong. I'm like, wait a minute, I can do so many things. What? Why would I diss my abilities? So I like to identify as being differently abled, but when I talk about disability, I always use language that is a little bit more mainstream.
Tell everybody about your theatrical debut playing Annie.
Okay, so when I was 7, my family bought a house down on the Jersey Shore, and we had next door neighbors who had 3 kids, and their oldest daughter had just come home from Stage Door, which is like a big theater camp in the Berkshires, and she came home and she was like, I am going to direct a production of Annie. She was 12, and it was going to go up in our backyard at the end of the summer, and she cast me as Annie. She cast our golden retriever as Sandy. She cast her little sister as Molly, and she cast my dad as Miss Hannigan. And he did the role in full drag at the end of the summer. And it was, I always say it was when I remember my life beginning, because before Annie, the identity of just being a little girl in a wheelchair didn't feel good. And I felt like the world looked at me and felt badly for me. And then I had this experience of being on stage and people were looking at me and they didn't feel bad for me. They were listening to the story I was telling and they admired my ability to sing and act and dance. And that was the kind of attention I wanted. And so that was like, oh my God, I found my purpose. This feels so empowering. And I also talk about how it was really exciting to feel like I knew how to play any character, because there were days that playing Allie was just too much and it was like too intimidating, or I felt shy, or I felt like I couldn't move forward at school. And so to put on cowboy boots one day and feel like Annie Oakley was giving me some power felt amazing. I just turned into such a theater buff, and it really changed my life.
Are you still in touch with that neighbor who took a chance on a girl in a chair playing Annie?
Yes, I am. She is an incredible designer. She's a fashion designer. Her name's Rachel Antonoff. You may know her. And her brother is Jack Antonoff, who is the lead singer of Bleachers. So they are a very talented and loving and giving family that thank goodness we're still in touch, and
Yeah.
they still live next door to us at the beach.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
So,
so cool.
yeah,
I
over.
feel like I can imagine a production of Annie, a professional, like a Broadway production with Annie in a chair.
I know, it'd be
Because
cool.
It's the idea of Annie is that she's this kid who, she's scrappy and, kind of nobody wants that kid. And
Yeah.
and the layers of having her be differently abled could really, put a different kind of understanding on
Yeah.
that script. And that's one of the things that Spring Awakening did as well. It wasn't just a translated show, but there was this historical precedent for the era in which the play happened, where deaf people were being criminalized.
Yeah.
And I love a show that can change the way it's cast to actually change the way that the audience can understand the content.
Yeah, and in my experience, I have found that disability has been able to heighten the story that we're telling. It doesn't take away. And for a long time, I was afraid, I'll never get cast. This is not, being in a chair is not something, not a story that people want to tell. Because growing up, watching TV, going to shows, and going to the movies, I never saw anybody who looked like me. And that's a huge motivation for me now, because my community deserves to have role models that are in the media, that are out there, so that little kids who want to be performers or who have any dreams see that, it's possible. It's possible to be in a wheelchair and fall in love. And there's a love story on TV or whatever it might be, or it's possible to achieve my dreams. And I didn't have that. So that is a huge motivation for me.
I've heard you say that if you had the chance to walk, you wouldn't.
Good question. So I have been hurt. I was in a car accident when I was 2 years old, and I don't have any memory of walking. I don't have any memory of moving around like maybe you would. So the idea of changing my life so much and being able to walk is really kind of scary to me. Like, what would that be like to walk down the street? And I love my life so much, and I feel like my chair has opened up so many doors and allowed me to connect with so many people. But I say, no, I really would not want to walk. That's not what's on my mind. But if there was an opportunity where somebody was like, hey, take this pill and you'll be able to get up and walk, I think I would be so curious to be like, what is that? It's like, what is it like to walk onto the beach? Like, what is that? Because I've got my beach wheelchair.
You do?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What is that like?
It's like a wheelchair with balloon tires, and I call it my tractor because it's kind of big. But my dream is this summer, and this is for anybody watching, anyone who knows how to build an electric chair that goes on sand. It needs to have treads, but I want to build one so that I can get up to the beach on my own, because I've never been able to do it, because these chairs, I can't push myself, like somebody else has to push it. So that's one of my dreams, is that I want to have a beach wheelchair that like is maybe hot pink and like has like a motor on that goes onto the.
Oh my gosh, I knew we were kindred spirits. I'm obsessed with that.
Like a Barbie beach chair.
That's something about that story. I don't know whether it's about the idea of what it would feel like to walk on sand, or whether it's the idea of you on the beach. But it reminded me, when you were first doing theater, wasn't part of your world from Little Mermaid your audition song?
Oh yeah. Always.
I mean,
always,
what a
always.
perfect.
I think I even sang it in college, and I had a moment of like, Allie, no more, put it to bed. But I love Part of Your World, and I relate to it, because you take it out of the context of a mermaid. And I don't know, I really relate to that song. So, that song was very special to me for a long time, and I have a recording of me singing it when I was 11.
I hope you will be tweeting that later this afternoon, because everybody wants to see it. Put it on YouTube.
Good idea.
Speaking of seeing you on screen, you made an appearance on Glee after being the third runner, or coming in third on the Glee Project, Glee's reality show. You had some hesitation about doing reality TV.
Yes. So after I graduated college, I auditioned for Glee, and I waited 3 years and didn't hear anything back from casting. And I was like, wait a minute, this is my show. Like, there's somebody already in a chair on the show. Why can't I do the show? And It was when Glee was like blowing up, and then the Glee project began to be advertised on Facebook, and so I was.
Wasn't it MySpace? Didn't you audition through MySpace?
I put my audition video on MySpace.
Amazing.
Which is so good. It's like it like captures that moment so well.
All you have to do is say the word, and people are transported to a different era.
Yeah. So I when I first heard about the Glee project, I was nervous about it because reality TV, had just come out of NYU, and I sort of had this attitude of like, I have too much training, like I'm an actress, and not really able to see that this was an opportunity leading to another opportunity. And the Glee project actually was the perfect situation for me because anywhere I go, there's some curiosity about my chair and my story. And so on reality TV, you get to tell your personal story. And it was the kind of show that was really encouraging and, you know, highlighted the underdog. And I got to sing and act and dance on the show. So it was really the best of all worlds. I got to tell my story and then perform on TV for 10 weeks.
I think
cool.
The idea that you are a dancer, after having seen you perform on television and on stage, now it's so obvious to me. Even just the way that you move around the world in your chair feels very dance-y. But I think that for a lot of people, the idea of someone who's paralyzed from the chest down being a dancer doesn't compute.
Yeah.
Can you talk about becoming a dancer and realizing that you could be one?
Yeah, well, the dance world is so much about your ability with your body. And if somebody sees a body that's limited, they think, oh, how does that work? But the truth is that when you don't have ability with a certain part of your body, your other abilities become heightened. So the way that I move my hands, the way that I move my arms is my own language because I have to use them for so much more. I use my hands and my arms to get in and out of the shower. You know what I mean? And so all of that, and so my mom always said, oh, Allie, you're so graceful because of your experience of being, you know, in a chair. And I also think that when you live your life on wheels, there's like this new kind of vocabulary and language because you glide. You know what I mean? It's not choppy like walking or running. It's sort of this like really amazing movement, like as if you're gliding across ice. So yes, when I first became or started dancing, I remember being really intimidated because all the dance classes, a lot of the time, were about your feet and your legs. And when I got to NYU and started taking ballet class, we'd spend hours at the bar. And everyone's doing tondus, and I'm like, how in the world am I going to do tondus? And tondus is when you like point your foot, right?
Yeah,
so
thank you. I was going to ask you to clarify.
And so I just started using my hands and finding other vocabulary, and it really worked to my ability because it was also a huge lesson in translation. So with movement, I translate everything. So if the choreography is step touch, okay, how am I going to step touch in my chair? Well, wheelchairs don't move side to side. Cool. We know that. Let's not fight it. Okay, but I can move my upper body, and like, what is it like to move my shoulders in that way? And I don't really have my core, so do I want to hold on to my wheels and create that movement? Or is it more important to be doing the hand and the snap, you know? So I've learned to translate, and then I was on a wheelchair dance team with a bunch of girls in chairs. And that was so cool to be in a room where everyone was moving the same way. I didn't have to translate. But then it was also really difficult because I couldn't make it my own. I kind of had to do what everyone else was doing. So, I feel really fortunate to have had all those experiences because I think that really owning how you move when you're in a wheelchair is so important. And even just today, like in an interview or in a situation where you just have to be present and hold your body up. If you have a disability, you've got all these things in your head about how do I look, how do I move, can I do this, can I do that, how are people going to perceive me? And it's so nice to be at ease with your body.
I wondered about, you mentioned not having core strength, but when I think about vocal training, I feel like the diaphragm and the core strength is so important. You have this powerhouse voice. How does your paralysis affect your ability to project your voice in that way?
Yeah. when I first started singing, it was never about the technique. It was always about expressing something. And I got really good at imitating, which I think is how a lot of people learn to sing. It's like, oh, I'm going to imitate Andrea McArdle from Annie, and I want my voice to sound like hers. And
I'm so tempted to ask you to do some impressions right now.
yeah, I bet you are. No, but so it was never about technique. And then when I started taking lessons, my teachers, we did a lot of visualization. Okay, imagine that your ribs are expanding. I mean, I literally am paralyzed from here down. So it's like, okay, I'm going to visualize this, because to engage that and make that happen becomes really fuzzy. But what is cool is your breath and breathing. I don't have any trouble breathing, thank goodness. That once you start to breathe, it connects everything for you. So all of this work that we feel like we have to do to sing, it's actually just like all like not true. If you're really connected to your breath. And I also wear a brace that helps me sit up straight, and I use it kind of as my core. I call it my corset, but because why not? And so when I breathe, I can feel my body against it. Just the pressure of it. I don't feel my skin, but I feel the pressure of it, and that reminds me, okay, good, you're getting a good breath. And we used to find tricks with like my mouth, like breathing and feeling cool air hit the back of your throat, and that is the sign of getting a really big deep breath. So there were all these tricks that we came up with, and then more than anything for me, it was just about expressing something, and I had a lot to express.
Yeah.
And still do, obviously. I am not shy, but this was really my outlet. Singing became my outlet.
I think that my favorite quote that I've read from you is when you said that being in a chair was the perfect preparation for showbiz.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, totally. My experience of being in a wheelchair when I was younger is that I wasn't always included in things. And I don't think it was ever like intentionally mean or nasty. It was just like, oh, she can't do that. But for a kid, and I was very aware socially and emotionally, very in touch with what was going on, it was obviously really hurtful. And so I became an expert at flipping negative situations into something positive. And so when I wasn't included, I'd be like, okay, that's right, I wasn't supposed to do that anyway. I'm going to go find something else to do. And my parents also had a really positive outlook, and we were very determined to not look at what I couldn't do, but what I could. And so I just want to share this little piece, because my dad is a motivational speaker, and he and I do speaking gigs now together, and we do this thing where we share this equation. It's E plus R equals O. E plus R equals O. The events of our life plus the response equals the outcome. The events of our life we never have control over, but our response we have 100% control over. So if we can get a hold of our responses to things, like being excluded, like feeling like you don't belong, like you don't have purpose or whatever, if we can get control of how we feel about those events, then the outcome we have 50% control over, which I love. I'm always reminded of that. And in this industry, because so often you don't have any control as an actor. You go in, you do your best, and you hope that you get the job, but you don't. That is it. So, and you never know where the opportunities are going to be coming from and how they're coming your way. So, so I've always felt my chair was like made me tough and made me positive and optimistic and forced me to become confident in who I was, and so it's really helped me.
That's so cool.
This is how she rolls.
Literally.
I've
been avoiding it, but I can't anymore.
There's so many puns.
I know.
Just
the idea of a role model.
Oh, yeah. The whole thing.
But Yeah, I'm sure you hear that a million times a day. But
the other night, my boyfriend and I were having some people over for dinner, and we were talking about like hilarious memoir titles. You know, like this is Sitting Pretty or whatever.
Well,
I mean,
there was a little bit of wordplay that was incorporated into the choreography at Spring Awakening. The Mariana Whelan line where you roll across the stage.
Yeah, I mean that character, like that was supposed to be her last name.
Yeah, I know.
And in rehearsal, our director, Michael Arden, was like, "Allie, will you be Mariana Whelan?" And I was like, "Sure." Oh my gosh, that's such a great idea! Like, didn't hit me at first, but
it hit me. I mean, it was a really clever nod to the lyrics, and just one of a million in that production.
Thank you,
Allie. Thank you for rolling into our lives.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved this. Thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Laura Heywood interviews.
Can you love Ali Stroger anymore? Oh my gosh. The day of Tony nominations, or the day after, I guess, I saw her at a press event and she just rolled right up to me and gave me a huge hug. And it was like we were both so excited. The selfie we tried to take came out blurry. It's time for another interview with some Tony nominees. Earlier this season, I got to sit down with 3 stars of the celebrated original musical, The Prom, and now all 3 of them are leading performer Tony nominees. If you haven't seen this show, it's a joyful, moving, hilarious romp. Basically everything you could want from a Broadway musical. And if you have not yet seen The Prom, this interview might just convince you. Today, I have 3 theatrical veterans joining me who together have 30 Broadway credits to their names. They star together in The Prom, a brand new original show that's Broadway's best reviewed musical of the season. I've already seen it 3 times, and it's been open under a month. So I'm beyond excited to sit down with superstars Beth Leavel, Brooks Ashmanskas, and Caitlin Kinnunen. Brooks, Beth, and Caitlin.
Thank you.
Congratulations on The Prom.
Thank you so much.
Caitlin, why don't you start and give us the sort of the elevator pitch about what this show's all about?
Elevator pitch. All right, here we go. It's about a 17-year-old girl who wants to take her girlfriend to the prom, and the PTA says no, and they decide to cancel the prom. These 4 veteran Broadway performers who are a little down on their luck and in a bad show decided to put themselves back in the spotlight by going to Indiana and trying to save the day, and shenanigans ensue.
That's a great description. You really nailed it.
Well done.
Thank you.
See, we would have said it's about 4 Broadway actors.
It's elderly, differently depending on who you ask,
whose worlds collide.
So you play the 17-year-old girl, and you play the
75-year-old.
Hey. Yes, Brooks and I and Chris Sieber and Angie Schwarr play the 4 New York actors. And the show opens with
at an opening night party.
Eleanor Roosevelt, the musical, which is a huge flop. And then we realize that we need to get a cause celeb or anything to get press. And we hear about this situation in Indiana. So we go to save the day, and lo and behold,
Make everything worse.
we make everything worse. And maybe we go to save her, and maybe she saves us.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's clear, I think, that your characters are a little bit out of touch with the real world.
Just a titch.
When your character, I believe she says, we had to tell the story of Eleanor Roosevelt because no one had ever heard of her.
Ridiculous. Dee Dee kind of lives in a bubble, bless her heart.
But she ends up somehow being so lovable while being sort of so detestable.
Exactly.
You know?
She has to be lovable. You just can't have a character, you can't dislike someone. She has such a nice journey, or dare I say, arc. Oh, thank you. I went to acting school.
I just threw up a little in my throat.
You're welcome.
So, Brooks, tell us a little bit about your character.
He's homosexual.
Yes. And what?
And he is a colleague of Dee Dee's, who they've done a lot of shows together. He's been relatively successful on Broadway, and is, I think, just a big-hearted, sweet, funny guy who needs a little tune-up on his life skills.
So you two have 13 and 14 Broadway credits, respectively. Did you feel at all like you were cast to play yourselves?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It was written for us, which is a little scary.
Yeah, because the writers are insane.
A heightened version. I like to call Dee Dee my evil twin.
Right.
So kind of a heightened version.
A turned-up version of ourselves.
Of who we are.
But neither of you have that
No.
egotism.
No, I know.
You're both very sweet.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So what I think is so brilliant about this show, which actually sort of gave me pause when I first heard about it when it was worked out in Atlanta, and we'll go back and sort of talk about the origins, but I heard it talked about simultaneously as a very sincere coming of age story about like a real political issue. And then I heard it as talked about as a send up of Broadway that was almost satirical. And I thought, how in the world can they do both of those things at the same time? Like maybe pick one and just go with that. But then when I saw it, it's like, I don't know, two different kinds of fabric woven together to make the perfect tapestry.
That's beautiful. I'm going to cross stitch that.
Yes, do
Thank
it.
you. Thank you.
Caitlin, did you guys work on the two different parts, like the Indiana teenager story separately? Like, did you guys, or did it all come together?
It all
as
just
one?
kind of came together as one. I don't think there ever was a point when we like really split the two. They actually work together really well. And you can't have one without the other in the show.
Yeah, I don't think it would be nearly as successful if it was just one or
It was
the
interesting
other.
talking to Chad Bagelin and Max Sklar, who wrote the music and the lyrics, because they have written a show that represents her, and they've written a score that represents the Broadway people. So it's a very eclectic blending, as well as emotional blending of the people in Indiana and us crazy people from Broadway.
Right.
Yeah, you guys find a little heart and you find a little zazz.
Yes. Yeah.
I was actually talking to Matt Sklar, who's a friend of mine, and he was telling me some stories about the origins of the show. There were some differences in some of the numbers back then. Brooks, was there a number that changed in Atlanta, or no, in the lab? He told me there was one. Maybe I'm leading you down the road.
Well, no, you're not. I mean, the opening section of this show has, I think what we have now on Broadway is probably the 75th version.
Wow.
We're almost not exaggerating.
No,
you're not
with
at all.
rehearsals and labs and workshops, and then out of town, and then all the rehearsals here. Excuse me, I had a stroke because it's that time of day. So I don't know what that means either.
Stroke diver.
But there were so many different versions. I think I'm stroking out because I get that feeling that Beth and I had in Atlanta, where we changed the lyrics that day and then try to do it.
I carried
And she
lyrics
had them
in my bra.
They would change the lyrics
And I
on
would
them
look up and
every
say,
day.
what is today? Oh, okay. And then we would go out like,
Which day is it?
Yeah.
which day is it? What lyric is it?
So that number definitely, right up till previews here, pretty much. It was like,
Now it works.
So how long ago was that you were in that lab, that first lab?
the first reading of it was
It was 4
around
years
7
ago.
years ago.
Oh, well, you're, wrong.
Where we did just like the first
Table
act.
read.
even.
Yeah,
It was
just sitting around to hear it out
maybe there was one song that Matt sang, I think, and then over those 7 years, it's been.
And in Atlanta, that was 4 years ago?
No, Atlanta was
2
years ago.
Okay. So I think the point is that Broadway shows take a really long time to get to the stage,
Yes.
no pun intended, where the audience gets to see it in its final form. And I think it's always important and really interesting to talk about all the changes that happen, all the work that goes on before you even get to previews. Caitlin, how long have you been involved with the project?
I've been involved for 4 years, which is when we did the first 29-hour table read of it. They had done stuff with it before, but 4 years ago is when there was a full score, full script. They hired the entire cast to come in and put it on its feet with music stands. So 4 years.
Yeah, and you're still playing a 17-year-old, and
Yes.
that's amazing. And you know,
Yes.
it's believable that you're
Thank
not
you.
17.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the fact that this is your third Broadway show and you are like the relative rookie on this panel is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it's amazing. Working with these guys every day is like a masterclass every single night.
Any particular lessons that you can credit these two with?
I was actually careful. I was talking about this yesterday that I feel like I've just walked away with self-confidence through this project. Watching them throughout the years and in the rehearsal processes it's been incredible. They are, whether they really are or not, I don't know, but they appear to be fearless. And the commitment that they give every night and that they gave every day in rehearsal was just outstanding to watch and just so cool to be a part of. And so, yeah, I just really was like, oh, wait, I can do this. I can be confident.
Beth, do you feel fearless?
Let's just put it this way. Most times, yes. When you particularly would have a creative team that is, you're in a room where you're so safe, I feel like I can throw anything up against the wall and we'll all be patient to see what sticks. So in that way, yes, I feel fearless. And the material, the craftsmanship of what I do is so perfect that it's easy to jump into without fear, jump into the water.
Yeah, especially with this material, because, like we said, because it was written with us in mind, or at least, the things they tried to play to our strengths. And so anyone who's feeling strong about what they do will be less fearful of doing it. Also, I find that it's really fun to fail in front of these people. And I fail all the time in the show. I like to throw it out there, and it's one of the things I find most funny is when something doesn't work.
Oh God, he's impossible. I like
fantastic.
to think we're big risk takers in the room, in a safe room, and that's all of us have discovered. I think the show is better because we've been we have risked failing, and and then they tell us what's funny, what doesn't work. Is that note too high? Is that note is what? So it's a privilege.
Is there such a thing as a note too high for you?
Yes, there absolutely is.
I don't know how you hit those notes.
Don't either.
I also don't know how you do it 8 times a week without throwing your whole voice out. What kind of warm-ups do you do, all three of you? What kind of self-care do you practice to keep your instruments
ask the
in
two
shape?
of them will answer this question.
Wait, you don't have an answer?
I have the answer. It's no. Nothing? No.
You don't warm
I'm
up?
a terrible example.
You don't sit backstage going, Brooks Ashmanskas, Brooks Ashmanskas.
God, no.
Caitlin Kinnunen. I felt like when I was practicing saying your names, I was
doing that. Just like
Caitlin Kinnunen.
Your voice is a muscle, so
Right.
it gets. My shows are my workout. That's almost my warm up. I think you and I are kind of similar. We do a lot of humming just to make sure it's there. If I did a full warm up, I'm not sure I could do the show.
I'd have nothing left.
So
if I did a full
left.
warm up.
So once I do some light humming and stuff, and poor people, if I'm in a cab, I'm like, sorry, sir.
I do it on the subway every day. I'm that crazy person who's just like,
and I look and make sure the person by me has, earphones in or something, so they won't be
I don't even do that. I'm just like, you're listening to me?
Or like,
creepy dead eyes.
Well, it reminds me of a line from the show. Most people pay premium prices to listen to this.
right, you just got a pro bono. You're welcome.
Yeah. Or you just get up and you go, ladies and gentlemen, it's showtime.
I have to warm up. Can you imagine?
You should try that.
I can just imagine the YouTube video, Beth Leavel, showtime
Loses
on the
her
L
mind.
train.
On the A train.
How often do you crack each other up? Because the show's so
Every
funny,
night.
and you guys really are these archetypal caricatures that even when you're not saying anything, your body language is so funny. I can just imagine you're trying to crack each other up in a way.
Brooks gets me every night.
He's bad. But you know what?
just
We
trying
know
to
the
tell the
audience
story.
the audience would never know.
No.
Because to me, I would never, ever, ever crack up on stage. That's not serving this story. No. But some days it's a real challenge.
Well, she
And also
is clearly a professional.
These parts, I think we do enjoy each other. Part of the chemistry that was so easy on this show because we've known and loved each other for a long time. So it's necessary to have that energy in certain scenes. The scenes in the hotel room and things. We enjoy the situations we are in together.
Absolutely.
So I think it's a great energy to have. That sort of, it's semi-dangerous, but that's great. It's
And I think the audience feels that too,
Yeah.
Again, that's kind of that risk thing I'm talking
it's
about.
a little tightrope walking.
Yeah, it's fun.
Is this the first
Smart.
time you guys have done a show together?
A full production.
Yeah. I feel sort of like this show's going to run for a really long time. And then whenever you are ready to step away from it, you're going to tour together.
Okay.
Or do a cruise together.
Cruise or
God.
Vegas.
Oh,
Yes,
Vegas.
yeah.
Reno. Maybe. Flagstaff.
Caitlin, how much input did you have into developing the background for your character?
I wouldn't say the background of it. The background was pretty set when I came onto the project. The writers have done a really good job of incorporating Caitlinisms into the role, I think, just because I just am who I am, and therefore that's what they got. And they were really willing to say like, okay, this is the thing you do. We're going to add more of that. So I'd say we just like got to add more to the background of Emma. I feel like Emma and Caitlin are pretty similar in their like awkwardness. And so they were just really great and fully embraced that and let me be myself on stage.
So you're talking about sort of physical
And vocally, and like things I would say in the room would end up in the script. So yeah, it was really cool.
I felt like I learned a lot about Emma from the way her bedroom's decorated.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I was, especially because I was there, for a repeat performance, I was like, oh, look, she has a Hermione 2020
Yes, I
sticker
do.
on her guitar.
Yeah, the
and
bedroom
she
is
really
actually
likes
really cool.
Riverdale.
Yes.
Like the way her bedroom's decorated. And I felt like that was it. The show, while certainly the issue of, a teenage lesbian not being allowed to bring her girlfriend to prom is set in a certain time in history and hopefully very soon will seem like a period piece. I also just felt like the tiny little details that the designers put in there locked it really into being so current.
Yeah. It's a story that unfortunately you say it is like a period piece, but it happens every year.
Yeah.
Like every year there are more stories that this is happening to people in the middle of America. And it's horrible. And so the fact that it is so current and we are telling this story now is really important. And a lot of people reach out to me through social media saying that we're telling their story. And that's horrible, but also like wonderful that they get a chance to see themselves portrayed honestly on stage.
What are the stage doors like?
They're like a little taller.
That's all you're going to
But
say?
it's a push. It's not a knob. It's a push. You mean like the people outside the stage door?
Who are you meeting? What stories are you hearing?
They're all very sweet. I always think, God, they must be sick of us by now. We just sat there looking at our faces. It's so sweet that they, in any other job, people don't leave their cubicle and people go, you were terrific.
What?
Can I get your, I think it's very sweet. And I'm stunned by it all the time. It's a lot of, it's actually pretty mixed stage-wise, but it's a lot of young people, and those are the ones that really, they just knock your breath out of your body when they're like, they just have tears in their eyes, and they're like, and
with joy.
They can't believe that their story is being told, and it's just, I'll cry talking about it. It's just...
And then you have other people that are so excited to see an original Broadway musical succeed so well.
It is not
on
based
so many
on
levels.
a movie.
No,
It's not based on a book.
Nothing.
It is original out of the heads of the creators, and man, we need more of that.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah.
And it's so singable and danceable. The cast album's out as of today. Have you sat down and listened to it, or is it just like I hear this 8 times a week?
We had a little listening party last week. It's all been one long day, like last week. But and listened to it on good speakers and everything, and these guys sound astonishing.
He sounds
sort of like
too.
just a sort of screaming.
Stop it.
No.
Toward the
fabulous.
pitch, No, it all sounds great. It's really well produced.
What is the thing that you'll take away from the prom that you think would surprise people the most?
What an audience would take away from it, or what we...
What you would take away from the journey?
Well, the love of what we do.
Yeah.
And
You
to
think
be
that
able
would
to do it
surprise
with
people?
these people.
Yeah.
I mean, what would surprise people would be constant injuries.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
So,
half kidding.
no, I mean, you're
But,
jumping on things. And
I'm old, and
Yeah.
jumping around and screaming that's something that I now can take with me for the rest of my life.
Those injuries.
Those scars.
Yeah. Awesome. I hope you're doing
But I
lots of
meant that first.
therapy.
I think all of us would also agree. I'm not sure I've ever experienced a show where I have so much joy.
Yeah.
It is so joyful.
And that is shared with my scene partner, the audience. It's just by the end of the curtain call, the whole place is vibrating with love and joy. That's the only way I can put it. And that will be with me forever and ever and
It's
ever.
rare.
I'm so thrilled that you referred to the audience as your scene partner.
Well, they are.
Because this is something I advocate constantly, that the audience needs to be considered the collaborator instead of the customer.
Oh, absolutely.
And I can tell from what you three and your incredible co-stars and ensemble are doing that you really believe that.
Oh, yeah.
And there's not a lot of fourth wall breaking. It's not that kind of scene partner, but the energy exchange is just unparalleled. And by the time we actually get up to dance during your bows, when the whole house just jumps to their feet, it's a party we're all invited to. It's a prom for everybody.
Really. It is. It is.
It's why we do it. I mean, it's people always ask, what's it like to do the same show 8 times a week for however long it runs or however long you're with it. It is into the same show every night,
right,
because of the audience. It can't be. The molecular structure of the room is different.
True.
You know.
And that one show, even though we do it 8 times a week, that one last night will never happen again.
No.
Never.
It's a singular moment that's exchanged between us and our scene partners.
Yeah.
So that never gets old because it reinvents itself every single show.
That's why I, as an audience member, can come back and see the show again and again, because I don't feel like I know what's going to happen. Even if I know the lines, even if I know the songs, there'll always be something that surprises me.
And we're still discovering. We're
yeah.
still discovering. One of my favorite moments now, sorry, we're talking amongst ourselves. One of my favorite moments now is when I come to you and you point to me at the very end after I'm going, and that never happened until about, last week? I'm like, how could I have missed that moment? I'm now proud of it.
That's awesome. I get a little bit, it's I was talking about the duality of the show, how there are these two shows in one. And I also feel sort of like no show has ever made me want to like dance and weep at the same time the way this one does. I can get choked up talking about it. And then I can also try to describe, especially the Broadway archetype characters. And I can't even get the words out because like I'm crying from laughing.
I think it's such a special show because of that it really is this like classic musical comedy, but then it sneaks up on you with this like heart of gold that you don't expect from it, and it just hits you, and it is this like you're laughing, you're crying, and you just leave the theater feeling every emotion possible.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you before we finish about the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
It was cold.
Freezing.
And you were sleeveless.
Hello.
I know. I believe someone on Twitter said you deserved a Tony Award just for that going sleeveless and doing that performance in the cold.
I have never been so cold in my life.
That was not the most surprising or controversial part of that performance. And there was a lot of attention on the girl kiss, which was about the most G-rated chaste thing I've ever seen on television. And yet there were certain like demographics, I guess, that were upset about it.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it was an interesting moment. I feel like Izzy and I went into it just not even really thinking about it. It's just a part of the show we do. It's a part of the story we tell. To us, it is not a big deal. I grew up in a community where it was accepted and normalized and it wasn't an issue. And so I didn't even really think about it. And then we performed at the parade and we got off the stage and Twitter blew up, and it was interesting to see everyone's comments on it. But what was really amazing to me, and I feel like to a lot of us, was that for every message of hate and backlash we got 10 times the love and support and camaraderie, and having that come at you felt so special and just overwhelming, because I don't know, it made people see that on stage and see that it is normal and it is accepted and that there is a community that welcomes you and supports you.
I thought it also just the backlash in itself was just a message of how necessary this show is.
Absolutely.
And if there is anybody who's like, oh yeah, maybe I can see that 10 years ago happening. It's like, no, that it's still happening. This is a show about now. This is not a period piece.
It's not.
And if we needed proof that that's the case, that, it was so... I had the same thing as you. Like as I was watching it, I was like, "Yay, the prom!"
Yeah, not a big deal.
But then after I realized that, we're what's the line? We're liberal Democrats from Broadway.
Yeah.
I'm one of those too.
Yep.
And it was good to be reminded how important a show like this and its messages are. So you guys had no preparation where they were like, look, this might be
There
a
was
thing.
some, like it definitely was talked about, and it was like, we're going to do this. There may be some backlash, but here we are. And
it seemed mostly that it was
you're fine.
because we all had the same experience of we did the rehearsal of it a couple of days before at night for the cameras, and it just sort of crossed myself at least, it just crossed my mind while they were doing it. I was like, oh well, I'm so glad we're doing this. You know, this is so great, a big way of getting this message out. And then our director Casey Nicolau, who was there, was like, and they're going close up on the kids. So great there. It was a great thing.
You know what occurs
talk about
to
living
me
in a bubble.
is your character is a guy who, and I don't think this really counts as a spoiler, but who never got to go to his prom.
Right.
And he ends up living vicariously through Emma a little bit and finding this pride. And I feel like there are kids at home who like are watching that kiss or who are seeing the coverage, maybe even like an interview like this, and they're feeling like, oh, that's what I never had and that's what I needed. Or maybe even adults who never had it, who are like, times are changing.
Yes. Speaking of the stage door situation, I've just as many young people. I've talked to people who are my age or even older who are so moved by that part of this character, especially his relationship with Caitlin's character, that they are Barry Glickman, you know, and like I had it easy in my life compared to them because of them, right? And they're so moved by the fact that a man of a certain age, you know, gets to have that feeling of being asked to the prom. You know, it's heavy. It kills me every night, 8 times a week. I'm not trying to make anything happen. It's happening to me right this second, you know?
Can
It's
we
very
throw
moving.
a prom for all of those people
I
who
know.
never had one?
It's on
That's
stage
what we're
at the
doing
Long
at the
Acre.
Long Acre Theater right
every
now.
night, eight times a week.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh.
That's why it's such a celebration every night.
Totally.
For 4 to 5 minutes as a connection and a celebration of all that is musical comedy and all that art can do.
Well, it's really 2.5 hours of celebration.
Thank you.
of
Exactly.
that.
But not when you're standing up and
right,
dancing.
There's the
Or you
5-minute
can
dance
stand up
party.
if you want to.
Maybe check with the person behind you.
Right.
There is the 5-minute dance party, that feels like we're all there at the prom. But the whole thing, this whole show, it's not just a celebration of like growing up and figuring out who you are or realizing that maybe you've embraced fame a little too much. It's a celebration of what the theater can do in terms of taking people out of their real life problems for a few hours, but also reminding us what we can do about real life problems at the same time. And I couldn't recommend this show more highly. I've already seen it 3 times. I'm definitely going to go back to see it again. And it's really just been such an honor to have the 3 of you here on stage with me today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Laura Heywood interviews.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for the Tonys. And I'm excited that you got to hear my conversations today with 4 current 2019 Tony Award nominees. Beth Leavel, Brooks Ashmanskas. Oh my gosh. I practiced it so many times. Beth Leavel, Brooks Ashmanskas, Kinnunen, and Ali Stroker. And as I finish every show, I'm going to finish today with a call for doing good in the world. We do it just cause. Get it? We don't need a reason to do good in the world. And also, this is your call to action to support a just cause, or in this case, 2 just causes. The American Theater Wing and the Broadway League Foundation have partnered with Prizeo, and Prizeo is actually giving you an opportunity to win a trip to the 2019 Tony Awards. I helped produce a video for them this year, and it features Alex Brightman, Sarah Stiles, Judith Light, Derek Baskin, Harvey Fierstein, Jeff Daniels, Eva Noblezada, David Corins, Bob Mackey, Efren Sykes, Joe Iconis, and lots more Tony nominees. If you go to Prizeo.com, Prizeo.com/Tonys 2019, I believe is the exact link. You can not only watch that video, but you can also donate $10 to support arts education through the American Theater Wing and the Broadway League Foundation. And you might just end up getting to go to the Tony Awards. I'm going to be there. I'll be working behind the scenes, but maybe I'll come on out and greet you, say hi if you are the winner. But listen, donating $10 to arts education is about the easiest decision, whether or not there's a prize involved. So I wanted to make sure that you got to hear a little bit of that audio because I'm very, very proud of the project that we put together. So here is, to close out the show, your current 2019 Tony Award class, talking about arts education and encouraging you to donate to arts education through Prizeo. Thank you so much for being here with me on Laura Heywood Interviews for this special Tony Awards edition.
We're here at the Meet the Nominees. What is it? We're here at the Meet the Nominees press reception for the 2019 Tony Awards.
Take a bow because you're the VIP. Round trip airfare, VIP seating for 2, accommodations for 2.
You're going to go to that red carpet, you're going to go to the gala, and you're going to meet a celebrity presenter.
Listen, it's a lot of good stuff. Too long to remember, that's how good it is.
The most incredible, magical experience.
I can't wait to be in that room with all of these extraordinary artists.
The red carpet and the feeling in the theater.
A lot of nerves, a lot of nerves.
And everybody's hungry.
You can't make a lot of money with snacks.
It's off the charts excitement and glamour.
Everyone around you during commercial goes, give me some of that.
You want to be in the room where it happens.
Minimum $10 donation, but the more you donate, the more chance you have to win.
I don't want you to embarrass yourself by not giving enough money. People will find out.
I would have fought my way to the top of the line so that I could hand you my $10. Definitely.
Are you saying that for the price of one Hamilton, you get a chance to potentially get to the Tony Awards? Impossible.
Donate soon because that'll be here before we turn around. Every donation to this campaign will support arts education.
When you start young and you give young people the opportunity to participate in the arts, you transform their lives.
Being in band, being in chorus, and how it actually helped me, how it shaped my life. It gave me a place to belong.
To have a male teacher who also was a man of color doing music was so informative. That wasn't seen as much where I was from.
There would be no Tony Awards without arts education. If you're even contemplating this, it's because you love the arts.
That feeling of having contributed to a really worthy cause, it will stay with you.
Yo, check out Prizeo.com/Tonys2019 and #TakeABow for arts education.
I hope to see you at the Tony Awards.
I'll be at the Tonys, and I hope you be there too.